Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to share with you how to make gluten-free vegan brownies two different ways. If you're brand new to this channel, do remember to hit the subscribe button and the like button. So the main ingredients for both of these brownies will be sweet potato. So here I've got sweet potato that's about 90% cooked, and I've pureed it and I'm adding it to my mixing bowl with some date paste. I will link in the description box this date paste if you want to make it at home. Cocoa powder, and for this first recipe I'm using buckwheat flour, baking powder, and lastly I have some milk here. I'm just going to mix all of this together and then add the milk. Actually no, I changed my mind, I added the milk at this point. And then I'm just going to mix all of this together and get it into a nice smooth-ish mix. If you want this to be super smooth, you can use your food processor or a blender. I'm not sure about a blender, but definitely a food processor. You could use a food processor to mix this all together. But I wanted to show you that you can also do this using a mixing bowl. I'm going to mix this, and once it's nice and smooth, I'm going to transfer it to a baking tray, a parchment lined baking tray. The size of your baking tray will impact on the thickness or the thinness of your brownies. So if you're using a large baking tray, you will end up with thinner brownies, and if you're using a small baking tray, you will have thicker brownies. I'm just using the spoon to smooth out the mix onto the parchment paper, and then I'm going to just pop this into the oven and let it bake. This is the brownie straight out of the oven. I'm going to leave this to rest for 20 to 30 minutes before cutting into it. So I'm just going to remove this from the baking tray and then just leave it to cool down, and then I'm going to cut into it. Okay, so cut the brownies into your preferred size. I'm not quite sure what I was doing here. The cutting technique is just so lean, so wonky, but you get the idea. Just cut the brownies into pieces. And I'm going to show you what the inside of the brownies look like. So once I cut it all into pieces, I'm just going to show you what inside is looking like. Well, if the camera would focus, and I'm trying to find a nice pretty piece to show you guys. So that's what the top's looking like, the bottom, and then the inside is like a nice soft-ish squishy kind of consistency. Yeah, so this is the buckwheat brownie, and on to the next one, which I'm going to use oat flour instead of buckwheat flour. For this batch, I'm going to use super soft sweet potato. For the buckwheat brownies, I use potato that was probably about 90% done, but for this one, I'm going to use really soft sweet potato. So to the bowl, I'm adding the pureed potato, the oat flour, cocoa powder, baking powder, and lastly, the date paste to sweeten. Then I'm just going to mix this all together until it's nice and combined. And one thing to take note of is that the oat flour will work in a different way to the buckwheat flour. So you will need to use more oat flour for this one, because if you use a straight substitute of the same amount of flour, the consistency of the brownies will be very different. Personally, I found that if you just use a straight substitute, that the final brownie is way too wet and too soft for me. Maybe that's the kind of brownie you're going for, but for me personally, I didn't like it that soft, so I did make some changes to the oat version, the amount of oat flour that I used to get a drier consistency. This is the consistency that you should aim for. It's going to be nice and thick. And now just transfer it to a parchment lined baking tray. Once you have the mixture nice and smooth, place it in a preheated oven for 30 minutes. And this is what the final brownie is looking like, and it smelled amazing. Now to cover this, I'm going to use vegan chocolate, but if you want to make this completely sugar-free, you can use the chocolate sauce that I shared in my pancake recipe. I will link that above and below. So the vegan chocolate that I'm using has got a little bit of sugar in it, so this is not completely sugar-free, but if you want to make it sugar-free, just use a chocolate sauce instead. And I'm just grating on this chocolate on top, and then I'm gonna pop this back into the oven, into the warm oven, and the warm oven is just gonna melt that chocolate on top, and it's gonna be yummy, guys. After a couple of minutes in the oven, the chocolate topping is nice and melted, so I've just removed it from the oven, and I'm going to leave it remove it from the baking tray, and I'm going to leave it to cool just like I did with the first brownie. And this is the brownie in all its yumminess, and I'm just going to slice it all up. Then you get the picture. I'm going to slice it all up, and I'm going to show you this one as well as the first one that I made, the side-by-side comparison of the two. I would love to know, if you're going to make these brownies, which one are you leaning towards? The first one, the buckwheat flour version, or this one, the OT version with the chocolate layered or the chocolate topping? Let me know in the comment section which one you're going to make, and if you make either of them. And if you're on Instagram, do tag me so I can see your beautiful creations, and yes, we can talk a little bit more about brownies there or in the comment section. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're not subscribed, do remember to hit the subscribe button, like the like button, share this video, all that good stuff, and enjoy these gluten-free vegan chocolate brownies.